How sure can we be sure that our children have not been subjected to any kind of abuse? How can we protect them for the growing tendency around us of sexual harassment towards the children? How can we put a stop to such tendencies? To know how to insulate our dear children from these terrible experiences.
Awesome Parenting, the parenting channel for parents.
Why don't we believe such things? Because we've always heard about child sexual abuse, but we always think that it never happens to us. It only happens in movies, it only happens to the neighbor, it may happen in another state, but in my home it doesn't happen at all. Do you know that 7,200 children are subject to rape every year? That's what the survey says. And India is top 1 among the top 5 nations in child sexual abuse, which means an abuse may be happening in your home too, and we are not aware of it. So what do? How do we educate our children? In India, it's taboo to talk about sex because we feel that when we talk about sex to children, it's like giving them permission to have sex. Or we feel that the children are so smart these days, they're getting all the information from the internet. But do you think the children are going to the internet and looking at informations regarding sexual abuse, or they're looking at sex education? If children are going to the internet, they're definitely going to porn sites and not education. The responsibility of educating our children are on us. Quite often we feel that sex education is part of school and children are spending 1,080 hours a year in the school, and the prospectus says that there is sex education. But how many schools are actually imparting this sex education? And how many teachers or psychologists are equipped to talk about sex education? How many of them can talk without feeling remorse or feeling ashamed of the topic? How many of them can explain to a child of 5-year-old about his body parts? So if that's the case, a child is spending 7,680 hours at home. So isn't the responsibility more on the parents than in the school? It's actually a collective responsibility of the society to keep our children safe, because predators are there everywhere. Our children are being constantly watched. People are trying to attack our children. We have to keep them safe, not just our children. Every child in the society has to be kept safe. So how do we spread awareness? The number one thing we have to do is every parent has to be equipped to talk to children with regarding sex education. For that, we have to educate ourselves. All of us are not equipped to talk about that. There are wonderful informations on authentic sites on internet. Go there, look at those information, and then equip yourself to talk to your child. So how early do we do that? We have to do it as early as the child is given to another caretaker, whoever is it. If it is not in our own care, if we are going to give a child to another caretaker, if it is an grandparent, or if it's an uncle or anybody, even if it's a play school or a daycare center, before you set your child out, you have to educate your child. So what is the most important thing in educating your child about sex abuse? The number one thing which we always forget, and the most important thing, is educate your sons. Tell your sons not to rape before telling your daughters don't get raped. That's where we have a huge confusion. We're always telling our daughters, behave yourself in public, wear decent clothes, don't be seen out after certain hour, when the actual problem is our sons. We have to tell our sons that you cannot touch the body of another human being without the consent of that human being. That should be the number one rule how we educate our sons, because it begins with educating our sons. Then we have to tell our children what are the private parts. Educate your children on what are their private parts, because we are educating them when they're very small. Tell them the part of your chest, the area between your legs, the part behind the legs, and the lips are your private parts. Ideally, to a girl you can say the part that is covered by a swimming dress. These are your private parts. Nobody is supposed to touch your private parts, because these are only your private parts and only you are supposed to touch, or your parents when they are giving you a bath. Only for hygienic reasons even parents should touch their private parts. Nobody else touch their private parts, and if they do that, you can tell them no. Also tell the children, You are not supposed to touch another person's private parts. And you should tell your children also, no other person should touch their private parts in front of you. For any of this, you can say no, you can walk off from there and go into safety. And this is not just a one-time education. You need to keep reinforcing this on the child, and as they grow up, you need to talk to them more about sex education. And teenagers, when they reach, you need to tell them about the safety measures and what is allowed when, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Tell the child that if someone touches you and you don't feel good about it, even if it touches your hand and you somehow feel not good about it, it is an inappropriate touch. Someone is not supposed to touch you like that. But if it is an okay touch, if it is just a caressing touch, it's fine. So they need to know the difference between what is an appropriate touch and what is an inappropriate touch. No parents can shy away from this because child sexual abuse is on the rise. We need to give them information. There is no point in crying after this happens. And we have a society which feels that a child who's abused sexually is seen as a stigma to the society. So why do we let our child go there? Let's educate them earlier. Sometimes the parents don't have a good communication with their child. In such cases, children don't come back and say if there is any slight sexual abuse or physical abuse happening. In such situation, you probably can make out from their demeanor. Quite often, the person who's abusing them will tell them that if you tell your parents, I'm going to do something bad to you or something bad to your parents. Or they might lure them saying, this is our little secret, nobody else should know this. So the child is afraid and doesn't tell out. But if you are being an awesome parent, if you're being a conscious parent, you can definitely make out from the body language of the child, because the child will be withdrawn. The child will feel very dirty, maybe constantly touching the private parts. The child may not like to go somewhere. The child may not be feeling happy, might have some anxiety, maybe some depressive mood, or maybe constantly looking at some sexual sites or somebody's sexual parts. So these kind of if you get some indicators like this, ideally talk to the child. And when the child tells you something about somebody has touched the wrong part or somebody has tried to abuse them, whoever it is, believe them, because 60% of sexual abuse is done by people known to the child. 30% are by family members and only 10% is by outsiders. Somebody very close to you may be abusing your child, and your child comes and you say, no, uncle will not do such a thing, then the child will never come back to you because you don't trust the child. Your number one trust as awesome parents should be on your own child. When your child comes and says something to you, listen to your child. Don't blame the child and don't blame yourself, because as an awesome parent, you have to be calm to listen to your child. Don't blame the child, say that it's your fault. Listen to the child and take your child into safety. Tell the child, I'm there for you. I'm glad you told this to me. I will ensure that you're protected from that person henceforth and nothing will happen to you further. That's the most important healing for a child if the child is subject to any kind of sexual abuse. We have a couple of things that we believe, the myths that we believe. We believe that, first of all, we believe that our child may not be sexually abused, and we feel that only violence is abuse. Sometimes we feel that people in our family will not abuse. Sometimes we feel that from good families, if you're from a very good family, well-known aristocratic family, abuse will not happen. Abuse happens everywhere and anywhere. It depends on how you educate your child and how you listen to them when something happens. The safety of our child is most important than anything else, even more important than any other relationship there, because if you cannot safeguard your child and if you're going to safeguard somebody else in the society, then you have lost the battle of being an awesome parent.